Hello, Mind Mappers, and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be going over Willpower by Baumeister and John Tierney, Rediscovering the Greatest Human Strength. This book is going to be perfect for you if you're the type of person that has trouble keeping up with their commitments, building new habits, or just getting the things done that you say you're going to do in a day. This book is filled with not only science, but a lot of practical advice. You're going to get some real takeaways and be able to implement it immediately into your life. And with that, we'll move directly into the introduction, where I've pulled out a quote from the book that I think will give us a good overview of what we can expect to learn. The result, after dozens of experiments in Baumeister's lab and hundreds elsewhere, is a new understanding of willpower and of the self. We want to tell you what's been learned about human behavior and how you can use it to change yourself for the better. Acquiring self-control isn't as magically simple as the techniques in modern self-help books, but neither does it have to be as grim as the Victorians made it out to be. Ultimately, self-control lets you relax because it removes stress and enables you to conserve willpower for the important challenges. We're confident that this book's lessons can make your life not just more productive and fulfilling, but also easier and happier. Who doesn't want that? More productive, more fulfilling, easier, and happier. And we can guarantee that you will not have to endure any sermons against bare ankles. So, is this the truth? Is willpower the key to everything? Is willpower the key to a productive and fulfilling life that's easier and happier? When we want to make a change in our lives, we know that we must rely upon our willpower. Whether we're trying to break a bad habit or cultivate a good one, willpower is there. Resisting temptation, forgoing distraction, or putting ourselves in uncomfortable situation all requires willpower. But what really is willpower? The dictionary says that it's control exerted, to do something or to restrain from impulses, or the ability to control your own thoughts and the way in which you behave. Sounds pretty simple, right? Well, it is and it isn't. Most self-help books completely forget about this part of the change process, thinking that willpower is just something that you conjure up. But if you don't have the skills and the understanding necessary to use willpower, can you ever really make the change that they're asking you to make? This would mean that if you don't know how, or you don't know about willpower, all other self-help concepts would be useless. So I would say willpower just might be the key to everything. And of course, how can we cultivate more willpower? That's what we're going to learn inside this mind map. We'll also learn how to use our limited willpower in ways that maximize our results and save more of it for truly dire situations. And with that, we'll talk a little bit about mind mapping and move into the big ideas of Willpower by Baumeister. You can get the most out of these mind maps by following along. You can also find the process of how I mind map, plus all 50 plus mind map templates, including this one, at the link down below. Following along with the mind maps helps you learn more, remember better, and actually apply these books to your life. Of course, we're trying to be warriors of the mind and not librarians of the mind. We want to take action on the concepts inside of this book. Our first big idea here is eat. The quote from the book goes like this: "Now that we've surveyed the problems caused by lack of glucose, we can turn to the solutions and to cheerier topics like good meals and long naps." Who would have thought our first quote would be about good meals and long naps when it comes to willpower? Here are some lessons and strategies for putting glucose to work for you. Feed the beast. By beast, we don't mean Beelzebub. We mean the potential demon inside you or anyone spending time with you. Glucose depletion can turn the most charming companion into a monster. The old advice about eating a good breakfast actually applies all day long, particularly on days when you're physically or mentally stressed. If you have a test, an important meeting, or a vital project, don't take it without glucose. Don't get into an argument with your boss 4 hours after lunch. Don't thrash out serious problems with your partner just before dinner. We've all seen this commercial before. Do you need a Snickers? Those commercials, "You're not you when you're hungry," are certainly funny, but they're also true. The body's number one priority is simply just to survive. When it thinks you don't have enough food to survive, you aren't going to have as much energy for other less threatening functions, like getting in an argument with your boss or having a civil conversation with your boss, as you would be able to if you had full glucose, or having this conversation with your partner before you've had dinner. Those are less threatening functions than being physically hungry. So, does this mean that we should eat Snickers all the time? Wouldn't that be great if we started the willpower book off with just eat Snickers all the time? It gives you infinite willpower. It's like a hack. Actually, of course, it's the opposite. To maintain steady self control, you're better off eating foods with low glycemic index. Most vegetables, nuts, peanuts, and cashews, many raw fruits, cheese, fish, meat, olive oil, and other good fats. These low glycemic foods have the added benefit they also help keep you slim. Pretty cool, right? Eating delicious foods that are also healthy keeps your willpower and energy high. However, of course, I'm not suggesting that you get on the willpower diet plan, as I think that's kind of backwards. That's not really what we're looking for. We're thinking something completely different. I think just being conscious of your willpower and food choices is a really good first step. Perhaps you could, as I have, start by bringing just your awareness to the levels of hunger and your willpower. Notice that before lunch, you're not able to take on some of the more challenging tasks of the day. Notice that 4 o'clock in the afternoon is probably not a good time to start a new project. Understanding how your body reacts to certain foods might help you make better decisions in the long run. Then, if you decide to make a change, some of the techniques that we'll talk about later on in the book can help. But first, we need to know that there's no simple willpower based diet. But we also need to know that if we're conscious of what we're eating, if we're conscious of what our eating is doing to our willpower, we'll be able to make better decisions. Our next big idea is dimensions. Exercising self-control in one area seemed to improve self-control in all areas of our life. They smoked fewer cigarettes and drank less alcohol. They kept their homes cleaner. They washed dishes instead of leaving them stacked in the sink. And they did their laundry more often. They procrastinated less. They did their work and chores instead of watching television or hanging out with their friends. They ate less junk food, replacing their bad eating habits with healthier ones. So this is a study of people who were exercising self-control in one particular area of their life. And what happened was, it seemed like it improved all different dimensions of their life. So if we want to make all our dimensions in our life much easier, exercise just a little self-control in any of them. And it's such a motivating observation. Sometimes I think that when we decide to wake up early, eat a little less junk food, or exercise regularly, we think that we're going to have less willpower for other things that go on. So sometimes you'll find entrepreneurs or people that I'm coaching, they excuse themselves for not eating healthy because they're focusing so much time on their business. And they're focused more on being successful more than they are on their own health. And this, of course, happens vice versa. Sometimes you get people so interested in their own health that they don't focus so much on their finances. But what actually happens is if we spend more willpower in one area, we can spend more willpower on eating a little healthier. We can spend more willpower on working a little bit less distracted. It gives us more willpower in the other areas. So we shouldn't be using that limited willpower as an excuse. This is counterintuitive, right? It seems like if we exert all our willpower in one dimension, we might not have enough to spread to the others. Turns out that's not the case, probably for many different reasons, but it turns out that willpower functions a little bit like a muscle. If you flex it in one area, you're going to be stronger in the next. Let's look at some high performance. Star athletes are often high performers in business after they retire. They flexed that willpower and discipline muscle so much that they can then point that in whatever direction they choose. Same with people who are successful at work. They're often marathon runners or rec athletes. These people aren't just good at one thing, or they don't just exert their willpower in one area of their life. They're good at the base skill for getting better at anything. And that base skill, of course, is the one we're talking about today. The base skill of exerting willpower, of using willpower to your advantage. Our first real tactical big idea is about precommitment. The essence of this strategy is to lock yourself into the virtuous path. You recognize that you'll face horrible temptations to stray from the path and that your willpower will weaken, so you make it impossible or somehow unthinkable, disgraceful, or sinful to leave the path. Precommitment is what Odysseus and his men used to get past the deadly songs of the sirens. He had himself lashed to the mast, with orders not to be untied no matter how much he pleaded to be freed to go to the sirens. His men used a different form of pre-commitment by plugging their ears so they couldn't hear the sirens' songs. They prevented themselves from being tempted at all, which generally is the safer of the two options. If you don't want to be sure, you don't want to gamble at a casino, you're better off staying out of it rather than strolling past the tables and counting on your friends to stop you from placing a bet. I think we all know this. Better yet is to put your name on the list of people maintained by casinos in some states who are not allowed to collect any money if they place winning bets. So, what's the best possible way not to give in to temptation? Well, make it impossible. Make a pre-commitment. It's a subtle trick that probably everyone has tried before, right? We take the junk food out of our kitchen, take the distraction blockers and put them on our computers. We put our phone on airplane mode. These are all really great tricks, all things that I use in my day-to-day life. The problem here, of course, is most of the time we can't lash ourselves to the mast of the ship. Even making something just a little bit more difficult can work wonders. Adding just 1 or 2 extra steps can give you the space you need to exert your willpower. This is really all about how we play offense with our willpower versus the defense. Instead of waiting for our willpower to need to kick in when we see the junk food or we start to get distracted or our phone starts to get a whole bunch of messages, we play offense. We use a little bit of willpower to take those away from our consciousness, to take those away from our purview so that we can actually focus on what we need to focus on. Here are a couple steps that I think you could try. Number 1 is don't make your life a minefield of temptation. Spend the time when you have the full tank of gas, the full tank of willpower, to make your daily path as easy as possible to stay on. When you stray, try to write it down. Of course, we're all going to fall off the wagon at one point or another. Write it down and remember, this way you can find a way to play offense before the defense is necessary. Did you eat some junk food at the office because someone brought in donuts? You might have to put in some type of a strategic plan to know that when the donuts come in, that you are going to have to be somewhere else that day, that you're going to have a healthy lunch packed. We're pre-committing. We are deciding how we're going to act before we need to act. And even better, we're making it impossible to act in a way that is incongruent with our virtuous path. Our next big idea is about meditation, something we've been talking quite a lot about in the last few videos. The quote goes like this: religious meditations often involve explicit and effortful regulation of attention. The beginner's exercise in Zen meditation is to count one's breath up to 10 and then do it again, over again, and over. The mind wanders quite naturally. It's normal for that to happen. So bringing it back to focus narrowly on one's breathing builds mental discipline. So does saying the rosary, chanting Hebrew psalms, or repeating Hindu mantras. It looks as if people come to associate religion with tamping down these temptations, says McCullough, who suggests that prayers and meditation rituals are a kind of anaerobic workout for self-control. Meditation and prayer is an anaerobic workout for self-control. Now, what does anaerobic workout mean? It means that you can last longer. It gives you more self-control because you've practiced it. So the best way to work your willpower muscle, of course, is meditation, prayer, or religious activities. Here we notice that it doesn't seem to matter which activity you do, just that you do it. Zen meditation, mindfulness, prayer, Hindu mantras, chanting psalms, all of them are a great willpower practice. I love this personally. Meditation is an anaerobic workout for self-control. I'm a huge fan of meditation, and I love that way of putting it. Flexing the muscles is obviously really important. The more you use them, the stronger you are. But I think it's just as important is flexing them in an environment where you don't pay for your mistakes. There's no way for meditation to be wrong. There's no way to do meditation wrong. And in that, it gives us a chance to constantly get off track and come back to the moment without paying the consequences of being distracted for an entire day or eating the junk food or whatever we're trying to exert willpower over. And to me, this is really what willpower is all about. No one is ever going to be perfect. and it's unlikely that you're going to be the first one. But the people who are able to recover quickly from lapses in willpower will be more successful in the long run. Now, how about you? What meditation practices are you currently doing? If you're not doing any, let me suggest one. I just call it quiet time. Step number 1 for me is to brew a warm drink in the morning. Something I would do anyways, and if I was missing that warm drink in the morning, I have much bigger problems going on than not doing my meditation. That warm drink in the morning is something I do every single day. And this is a concept that comes from Atomic Habits by James Clear. Recommend that you check out that video. It's available on this channel. But he says that if you're looking to create a habit, the best way to do it is to layer it on top of something that you're doing anyway. And that's what I do. I drink my coffee every single morning, almost without fail. And step number 2, I sit down with that coffee with no distractions, and I just focus on the sensations of drinking that warm drink. Step number 3, of course, is whoops, you're meditating. You're there. You've already focused your attention on that cup of coffee, and now all you need to do is slowly and persistently bring your attention back when it gets drawn away, as of course it will. You've done a great meditation and you've had a delicious cup of coffee or tea or whatever you're liking to drink in the morning. Our second gold point here, which I think is the second most important point right after pre-commitment from the entire book, is bright. The quote goes like this: "He needs the help of bright lines," a term that Ainsley borrows from lawyers. These clear, simple, unambiguous rules you can't help but notice when you cross a bright line. If you promise yourself to drink, not to drink or to smoke, if you promise yourself to drink or smoke moderately, that's not a bright line. It's a fuzzy boundary with no obvious point at which you go from moderation to excess. Because the transition is so gradual and your mind is so adept at overlooking your own failures, you may fail to notice when you've gone too far. So you can't be sure you're always going to follow the rule to drink moderately, right? It's hard to know what moderation really is when it comes to drinking. In contrast, zero tolerance is the bright line that we're talking about. Total abstinence with no exceptions anytime. It's not practical for all self-control problems. A dieter cannot stop eating all foods, but it works well in many different situations. Once you're committed to following a bright line rule, your present self can feel confident that your future self will observe it. And if you believe that the rule is sacred, a commandment from God, the unquestionable law of a higher power, then it becomes an especially bright line. You have more reason to expect your future self to respect it, and therefore, your belief becomes a form of self-control, a self-fulfilling mandate that I think I won't, and therefore I don't. The mind is really good at ignoring these small slips in willpower, these small slips away from what you say you might be doing. Here are some examples. Eating healthy, but having really large portions and larger each time you have a meal. Working for 8 hours, but really only putting in 1 good hour, but you still check off that you worked 8 hours. Working out, but not really giving it your all during the sessions. These all start off, of course, with the best intentions. Probably the first time you exercised your willpower on them, you ate perfectly. You worked all 8 hours, and you gave it all at your gym. But because it's not easy to tell what's perfect and what's good enough, it's easy to slowly slide back into old habits without even noticing. And that's where bright lines comes in. 99% is a challenge, but 100% is a breeze. Jack Canfield said that. When you commit to something, draw a bright line for yourself around it. This allows you to see when you're letting yourself slip. Here's a quick note. I like this concept, but I don't think that bright lines work perfectly in a lot of areas in our lives. Instead, I tend to think that having a reliable way to set expectations is what's important. Here are some examples from the ones that we used before. So you'll remember we talked about eating healthy but having large portions, working for 8 hours but really only putting 1 hour of good work, and working out but not really giving it your all. One way that you could do this is food journal before you plan to eat. It's a really good way to say, okay, this is my bright line. I'm going to have this for breakfast. I'm going to have this for lunch. I'm going to have this for dinner. You can set the bright line based on the day. And in that, you can keep track of your progress. You can keep track of what you're planning to do and whether you're living in congruence with that or not. One example for work is writing it down exactly what you need to get done that day. Completely forget about how many hours you're working and write down the 3 to 5 things that you need to get done that day. And did you live in congruence? Did you get those things done? And if you didn't, then you crossed over that bright line. And of course, the last one, having a workout plan. So many people from my personal training career back in my days never ever used a workout plan. And to me, that's completely crazy. I wouldn't go into a workout session without having some sort of a plan, even if it was just to fool around. I need to make sure that I have a plan for what I'm going to do. Otherwise, how do I know if I lived up to my commitment? Our final point is a very important point about willpower, and it's offense. People with good self control mainly use it not to rescue themselves in emergencies, but rather to develop effective habits and routines in school and at work. The results of these habits and routines were demonstrated in yet another recent set of studies in the United States, showing that people with high self control consistently report less stress in their lives. So these people that are high have a higher amount of self control, use a higher amount of willpower. If they have that higher amount of self control, they actually have less stress in their lives. Pretty counterintuitive again, right? But they use their self control not to get them through crises, but actually to avoid them. They give themselves enough time to finish a project. They take the car to the shop before it breaks down. They stay away from the all you can eat buffets, and they play offense instead of defense. That's what we want to do. We want to play offense with our willpower instead of playing defense. So high self-control equals less stressed. This is another counterintuitive point about willpower, something that we wouldn't necessarily think, right? How can exerting willpower make your life less stressful? Most people find exerting willpower a stressful experience. Well, people who are exerting self-control in the right way make their lives easier every time they do it by avoiding stressful situations and avoiding tempting situations and actually making it hard to get themselves into those situations in the first place. So, this is that concept that we talked about a little bit before of offense versus defense. And I think it's a really great visualization. Instead of worrying about when a temptation might hit it first and make it less likely to happen. Instead of going about your day as you normally would when trying to change, make your day as easy as you possibly can. And I would invite you, as kind of our last act here, to take a moment to play offense. What are some of the things in your life right now that you could do to make your life and make you a little bit less likely to stray from the virtuous path? Can you take 5 minutes to make a small change that would have exponential results? Can you go and throw out that candy in the cupboard? Can you go to the dollar store or go to a box store and buy yourself a big water bottle to make sure that you're eating enough or you're drinking enough water? Can you go and buy an egg timer so that you can set it each time you're ready to start a new work block and to kind of cue yourself to make sure you're working as hard as you possibly could? Those are all really good examples of playing offense in the willpower game. I want to thank you for being with me here today. This was Willpower by Roy Baumeister, a really, really great book. Of course, John Tierney was the writer, and Roy Baumeister was kind of the lead author, the one that was doing a lot of the studies. I want to thank you for being with me again. And if you're interested, I'm going to give you an offer for watching to the very end of the video and getting past those couple of mess ups that I had there at the very end. But if you're interested and you want to talk a little bit about willpower, you want to talk a little bit about getting over procrastination, you want to talk about getting the things done that you say you're going to do and living in congruence with yourself, I want to give you an invitation. I've got a free coaching session down in the description down below. And if you're interested, I would love to talk to you about any of those things or something completely different. I hope to see you there, and I hope to see you in the next video.